for next year. Waiting for next year.
Welcome to the WaitingForNextYear.com podcast. I'm your host, Craig Lindell, and sitting across from me, Ken Carman of the Ken Carman Show with Anthony Lima on 92.3 The Fan. How's it going, man?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
So you passed all the protocols, asked all the right questions, and got permission to come on this show. Is this a dangerous show? Do people talk about this show?
No, I don't think so. I don't. Well, wait a minute. They do talk about this show. They do, and I am a listener, especially to yours. But they always want to make sure, because if you get caught and then they find out that you didn't ask permission with anything there, then they're going to get upset. So I asked permission. They were really cool with it. It just took a while. My boss was out of town, and then he came back in. He's like, "Yeah, I don't care. Whatever."
I've gotten a bit of a reputation, though. I think it was when. So I've had Chuck Booms on the show. I've had Joe Lull on the show, and so whenever anybody leaves, gets fired, otherwise is dismissed, they're like, "Oh, so when's Kevin Kiley coming on the show? Oh, when's Sabrina coming on the show? Oh, when's?" I get these messages back channel all the time. They just joke with me. I've become the punchline. I think it's just because Joe Lull came on. But
Joe's a nice guy. I don't know why he wouldn't come on. Yeah.
No, of course he would. And I always keep the platform open, and it's one of the independent platforms that's not tied to a company. It's just funny. Like, no matter what happens, somebody's like, "Hey, when's so-and-so coming on the show?"
Isn't that a good thing, though?
Yeah.
Because there is, like, a checks and balances thing. You know what I mean? Like, there will still be... your guys' platform is pretty big. So it's always a system of, just in case, there's got to be somebody to kind of check the checkers and see what's going on there. So I welcome it. I love it.
Yeah. So I want to go back in time a little bit with your career before we talk about some current events and stuff. Because, when 92.3 The Fan first started, your first gig was that nighttime show, correct? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah.
Overall or just...
Well, no, at 92.3 The Fan.
Yeah.
And so here's this guy with a big voice who's carrying a show. At the beginning, it was almost by yourself. I'm going... I never heard of this guy. Where did this guy come from? And I had to do some homework to find out where he came from. How does that come together where the guy who did Ashland Radio and the Akron Arrows finds himself, with a pretty substantial slot, at the launch of a station in Cleveland by CBS?
Luck, in a lot of ways. Luck that my boss was willing to listen to everything and is open-minded to everything. That's why, anybody asks, I go, well, send him. He'll listen. He will listen. Andy will listen to your tape. I guarantee it, because he listened to mine. And it's just a ton of luck. And that's why part of it's where, and I don't like it because some people think it's an act. And sometimes it's a joke. Like, I'm going to make a joke. Like, "Oh, yeah, you're so thankful." Well, no, I really am. Because how it fell in my personal calendar was I was at another station. They downsized. And even though I was listed because they had been downsizing and downsizing and downsizing again, it was a major corporation. And they downsized one more time, and they had bought a traffic organization. I don't want to say names, whatever. But they bought a traffic organization, and my boss knew and I didn't know. So I was sitting there, and it was... And
that's Radio 101.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
always last to know.
Oh, yeah, well, of course. And I remember I saw the email and I went, "Oh, okay, that might not be good."
Opie and Anthony always joked that you never get a chance to say goodbye.
Oh, no, you shouldn't. And you really shouldn't. Honestly, you really shouldn't. I actually did get a chance to say goodbye, and it was embarrassing. Because when one of the times they downsized, and this was something I didn't know, that they were like, "Well, because I had an afternoon show." Mm-hmm. And they go, "Well, we got to get rid of your show because we have to better utilize you." And they kind of said it underneath their tongue, and I was like, "Okay." And they're like, "But we're going to give you an hour, and you can say goodbye." And I said, "Okay." I was heartbroken, and it was embarrassing. I wish. I look back on it now, and it was a nice thing they were trying to do, but I wish they didn't do it, because it was heart-wrenching. I felt so terrible. So as the calendar went,
when you were a young guy.
Oh yeah. Well, no, this thing I was.
How old were you?
When I got this job?
No, when you had that goodbye thing.
I was 25.
Yeah, and when you're 25, you think you're old, and now that you're in your 30s, 25 feels like a baby.
Oh my God, does it ever? Yeah, there's so much personal life that happens, but it was July 29th that year, and my boss calls me and goes, I need you to come in early for something tomorrow. I says, okay. And I didn't think anything of it. And I remember he walked out of the office, and I looked out the window, and I saw like a FedEx driver, I remember. And I remember for some reason, he was like, you know what, I could do that if this doesn't work out. And they came walking back in, they're like, yeah, Kenny. And I was like, oh, God. And I felt like I just witnessed a murder in front of me. Like, I was really surprised. So that was 3 weeks before I got married. My wife was actually, she'll admit it now, she acted like she was sad, but she was relieved. Because, at the time, I made no money, doing it. And I was on the road doing baseball and stuff like that. And she was like, well, at least he's going to, straighten himself out, and he'll go out and get a real job again.
That's one of those really funny things, too, that people over the years listening to this podcast have come to find out is like the celebrity that comes from being on radio is not matched with the money. Mm-hmm. Like people think, they're in broadcasting, they're celebrities, they must make money. No. Not the case. No, not the case. And especially because when I first started out, it was low, and there was no reason to give me any higher. That's the whole thing. I'm pretty honest about that stuff. So I remember we came back. I did a baseball road trip. I came back. Andy had heard my tape. He actually liked what he heard. He wanted to sit down and talk with me. I went in. I remember I totally thought I botched the interview. And I was like, well, that's that. I'm going to go get a job at the bread company now. Like, because that's where my father-in-law works. And I said, well, it's time to stop messing with this stuff and do it. And I came home. I took a nap. And he called me. He's like, oh, we'd like to offer you the job. And I went, all right. I was really surprised. So a lot of it, like everybody was so talent, hard work. Well, no, you got to work hard. You absolutely got to work hard. But some of it is luck. If he wasn't as open-minded as he was, and as he is, I certainly wouldn't be talking to you right now. No. Well, I've met Andy, and there's certainly, and I've met other program director types as well. And he's certainly one of the more open. And I'm not kissing his butt. He really is one of the ones that'll take a meeting, will actually listen, and actually talk to you about stuff.
Yeah, and he's one of the guys. And I think sometimes it can be difficult because when you do what we do, there's a lot of an ego can grow, and we all have egos because we all like to hear ourselves talk to some degree. But there's always going to be a line about what's open-minded and what he's the boss, and this is the decision that's going to be made here. And he doesn't blur that line, and I've always respected that line. And sometimes there's always points of contention with different hosts, but it's a good thing because I don't have to walk out of his office calling him names, because I know, like, hey, you know what, we talked it out about certain decisions here and there and whatever, and my comments are on the record, but he's my boss, and there's no reason to forget that, obviously, and there's no reason to take advantage of him having that policy. I think it's good, and I really think it's therapeutic sometimes. So
your nighttime show started out one way and certainly ended up a very different way. I think it started out as kind of one man and a mic, mm-hmm. and then it turned into kind of I don't want to call it a party. It was more organized than a party, but like the group vibe. Mm-hmm. And so did you always think it was going to end up that way, or did you always think it was going to be one man and a mic, and it just kind of happened to become this group thing with all the different features and bits and segments?
Well, it's weird because I know what I just said, but I don't like the sound of my own voice, and I do not like to do big. I don't like to do big, long-winded monologues.
When if it was the '80s, there'd be a little like echo on your voice, and
yeah. I don't like to do it. And I got lucky because I got Kenny, and I got so lucky with him because at first I see this guy, he had a green beard, and he walks in, I was like, all right, and then I had Falar, and I could immediately trust those guys, so I started to let them in. And then basically from there, you and
we're talking about Kenny Kidd with one of the most distinct voices in Cleveland radio.
His voice is so different. A lot of people think he's a black man.
Yeah, that's
He'll get
funny.
that a lot. They're like, oh my God, you're Kenny? And like, yeah. He's like, oh my God, I thought you were black. And he says, no. He gets it all the time. And I got lucky with him.
And a total metalhead.
Oh, yeah.
And just like,
definitely. And he's very creative. And I just had to learn to trust him over time. So it wasn't something that happened overnight. And then after that, you create characters. You take advantage of what you have because you don't have your content that's on. You should be lucky you're on. You feel grateful that you're on in a lot of ways. So you have that, and what it is you need to take it and learn, and that take it to the step that this is what you're doing to learn to get another step and to get somewhere else and to do what you want to do and to make the most of it. And we decided, I decided I was going to make the most of it. So Kenny then took ownership of it, and he decided he was going to make the most of it. And so did Chris. And then, this is back when we could accept interns as a company, and we took interns and we made them characters. And so that was part of it. It was, it was sometimes where at night, especially in the summertime, because I always thought like there was always callers on the line here. And there's not.
Yeah.
Not at night. So if you aren't talking Browns in the fall, or you're not talking the Cavs when they're really good, or something big happened with the Indians, which sometimes in baseball nothing happens for quite a while, they're not going to call. So you better get another voice in there, or people are going to start calling you things that you don't want to be called. So we got some people involved, and we had a lot of fun with that over time.
Well, and that's one of the things, too. It's like it's a well-worn playbook, turning all these different people into characters, just like the West Coast offense or whatever else. Just because you know the playbook doesn't mean you're going to be able to pull it off. You got to have the right people show up. And so it did kind of culminate into this thing where you guys started out with, I think, probably a cult following, and then it became too big to be called a cult following anymore. But what was that at its peak or whatever? I mean, did you ever want it to change, or did you always have an eye on kind of the next thing, or would you have been just as happy to keep that nighttime show forever?
There was a couple opportunities that came up, and I looked at a couple of the opportunities, whatever, and yeah, those didn't seem to be a fit because I always liked it here. I always really like it here. And then opportunities came up within us and with our company and stuff like that. So I was happy to, take advantage of those opportunities. But I think that to go back and think about what it became, I wanted to have fun with it, and it became fun, and there was also a part where you always want to be taken seriously, but never too seriously. At least you want to be taken as a person who's genuine and you really say what you mean. And I felt that people could trust me, that I said what I meant, and that things are never as bad as what they seem to be when it comes to sports or when it seems to come in life, and that I will always get something wrong and I'll always own up to it. And I think that people could trust me, and I think obviously people still can. That what I say is sometimes taken with a grain of salt, that is sometimes taken as to be a joke, and sometimes I mean what I say then, and I got a bad feeling I'm going to be wrong later, and sometimes I got to own up to that. If they trust you, and you always give them a reason to trust you, I think you do well, and I thank goodness I've been able to do well here.
Yeah. So then you make the move. Kiley and Booms ends, and you end up in the morning with Kevin Kiley. Mm-hmm. What was that time like? How did that feel? Kind of stepping in for a show that, it felt tumultuous from the outside. Yeah. So what did it feel like on the inside?
It was a lesson. It was a lesson in how to handle things, how to go about things. Kevin is in great physical shape, but he is 40 years older than I am. And there was a lot of times where sometimes, because there is a generation gap between me and Kevin and I should say, that there were times where I think that, and one of the things that I regret the most is that I don't think he always thought that I was paying attention. And it was just like a kid. I was paying attention to everything he did, good and bad, with things that I agreed with and things I didn't agree with. And there's a lot of lessons and a lot of things that I'll sit there and I'll talk about with Andy and stuff like that and go, oh my God, Kevin said that. Kevin would say this and say that about other things in life. And then there was times where we'd be in a break or something like that, because the thing that made it most fun is that Kevin was smart. Kevin obviously is still smart, but he would the reason that I think you might say tumultuous to me, because he always had me on my heels, and he always got me upset about something, and
he liked to poke that bear.
Yeah, boy did he ever. And I think there were a lot of times where it's like, well, you better come with all your information, or he will embarrass you on purpose, and he'll embarrass you to make a point of it. He'll embarrass you to teach you a lesson. He'll do all those things. And I learned a lot from him, just talking to people, seeing people. Some of the stuff that I thought was maybe a little outdated, that I knew, maybe I wouldn't do it that way. Maybe I wouldn't do it this way. But there was a lot of things I go, you know what, that's a good point. And then we'd start talking about life. And he was an incredibly interesting person. He'd tell me these stories about when he was young, and he'd be on the road with people and stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh my God. Because I just always thought, I never saw him physically because I was at night and he was in the morning. I only saw him twice before I filled in with him.
Yeah.
So he was like Batman to me. And then I actually get to speak to the guy. And once your guard is down and you're just hearing what he says, I'll just be sitting there with my head in my hands, just kind of listening to him like, oh my goodness, listen to what this guy has to say. And I just thought the one thing that I do regret out of that entire experience is that I think that when he left, that I think he thought that I did not pay attention to everything that he said. And it couldn't be, and maybe it's just my thought, maybe it's just my own insecurity there, but I absolutely try to pick up everything that he said. Sometimes maybe I wasn't paying attention, or at least enough attention for him, but I picked up a lot from him during that time.
Well, and it's a duo that neither you nor he planned. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a weird, from the outside looking in, it felt kind of weird that it was put together like that. So the way that it ended and the way that Kevin Kiley left, was certainly, Zach and Andre at the A to Z always say don't end up on Deadspin, and you didn't really end up on Deadspin, but you were kind of alongside when Kevin ended up on Deadspin.
Yeah, that's there was a couple times, The Atlantic actually, because I disagreed with him, and I knew Kevin wasn't trying to go as deep as what he did, but he did. And I remember that The Atlantic actually published a retraction because they said that I was the one. And I understand that he was trying to get a different point across, but I disagreed with him then, and I certainly would. If we had the discussion today, I certainly would disagree with him now. And
it was for those listening, it was over the hiring of a female in a football organization, and it's just and even not the issue itself, but the idea that you're producing the show, and this is something I've talked about with all kinds of different hosts, different media personalities over the years. You're producing a show, or you're doing a piece of content, a post, whatever it is, for a specific audience. And in this day and age, where everything's under a microscope, sometimes something that was intended for a small audience, an audience that has a certain level of understanding and perspective on the hosts as well as the content, mm-hmm. It loses all that when it gets exploded onto a national stage.
Yeah.
And so how did that feel, just knowing like, well, these people they're just reading this in black and white and they have no idea who Kevin Kiley is and what he's done for the last 10, in this case, 4 or 5 years in Cleveland. The audience that was intended for is no longer the target.
Well, I kind of had the same experience last year during the Eastern Conference Finals against Toronto, because there was this big thing about adversity, and I just went nuts. I just went nuts. I couldn't believe it. I go, it feels like, and this was purely sports, but I'm going, what is this? I go, you got these people, these pundits out here saying what they're saying about the Cavs. It's a good team, and you don't have to apologize for it. I'm talking to people in Cleveland. I'm talking to Cavs fans. Uh-huh. And somehow this gets picked up, and it kind of takes off. And there were people who took the words and twisted the words and heard different things and took it in differently. And it made me think back to that moment of going, everything you say can be taken in a different tone. And there's lessons you learn from those things and how to move on. Some of it's just because of inexperience. Some of it's because times change, and maybe some people don't during that. But that was one of the things that I definitely took the lesson from and learned from that one, and I took the lesson from the thing that happened against Toronto, and I learned from that one. Now, there wasn't a big fallout or anything like that, right. But there was a couple times where I'm getting these calls and I'm getting these writers' requests and going, that's not what I said at all. That's not what I'm trying to say at all there.
Well, and the minute you defend yourself, people think you're backtracking.
Oh, yeah. That's...
So you're saying you didn't mean what you said the first time that I took to mean differently than the way you intended.
Yeah, nobody likes...
No takebacks, Ken.
Yeah, and there was a couple times where a couple of writers called me, and they had a couple of questions that it kind of got a little bit contentious during that, because I said, I didn't want to call anybody stupid, but at the same time,
whenever you say I didn't want to call anybody stupid, you absolutely wanted to call people stupid.
That's the thing. They call me up over it, and I go, listen, boss. I mean, I know you. I got the audio right here, and I'll explain every bit of it. He goes, well, are you backtracking on it? This is the exact same that happened. And I said, no, what I meant about the Cavaliers is what I mean about the Cleveland Cavaliers, what I think that they're going to do. And I said, I don't understand how this gets so contentious. It was a guy up in Toronto. Yeah. But I said, if you can't get that through, there's nothing more I can explain to you. And then it became, well, are you calling me dumb? And I go, no, I think you're starting to feel feelings about yourself that you might be, because we are going through this, and it didn't end very well. But other than that, it was just kind of, okay, let's calm down, everybody, and see where this goes. But again, I had no problem, just because it's like I meant it for Cleveland, and if anybody had any sort of a problem with it outside of Cleveland, they can go pound sand. I don't care. I'm talking to I'm in Cleveland, and I'm talking to the listeners in Cleveland, the fans in Cleveland, and if somebody in Toronto had a problem about it, that sucks to be them.
So you're not much of a hot take artist. You don't do a lot of that kind of stuff. But so when you do end up mixing it up with somebody, you've fought with Bull, mm-hmm. and it's been entertaining. But it's also like you guys fight the way I fight with my brother, where I can drop an MF on my brother, but he knows like. In the end, there's like a certain amount of love that comes with when you fight with your brother. I almost feel like when you actually fight with somebody, that means you actually like them. And you wouldn't fight with somebody if you didn't actually like them.
If I don't like somebody, I wouldn't talk to them. In the media?
Especially to fight with them.
Oh, yeah. In the media and things like that. Yeah. If I don't like that person, or if I don't like what they do or anything like that, I will not speak about them. Hell, I tried to do it today. I tried to get Lima to not mention Ryan Grigson to me because I do not approve whatsoever the job that he did in Indianapolis, and to hear his name attached with a football team that I want to do well, and that a lot of my friends and family and fans here in Cleveland, the fans here in Cleveland want to do well, frankly scares me. And so the only comfort I take away from that is that there's a big system of checks and balances before that, but I didn't want to mention the guy's name. Well, Bull, I'll talk with Bull all day long. I don't care about that. And there's times where I absolutely disagree with Bull. Most of the time I disagree with Bull. But I certainly respect him. And I'm smiling as I say it, just because there's so many times I mess with Bull, and then when Bull messes back, I have to remind myself that I've messed with Bull way more times than he's messed with me. And I need to take that as a joke and not get so sensitive over it, because I'd be going completely against everything that I stood for with the guy. So there's times where Bull has gotten me, and I've been a little bit upset because he's gotten me. But you know what? You're going to have to take it. But I think that I love it. I love it in the afternoon, because so many people will say, hey, Bull's talking about this. Yeah. And then, hey, Bull's talking about this. And I go, all right, let me hear this. And then I hear it, and I go, okay, well, the old Lord Baseball is going to get it tomorrow. Like, that's going to have to happen. But I think at the end, I hope he gets it as a joke, because I will text him like, I love you, buddy. We're just messing with you here.
My favorite, I can't even remember what the topic was. I don't remember what year it was, but I just remember you dialing in during that afternoon show, and you guys kind of like screaming back and forth, and it was just a riot. I just loved it.
Was this last fall during the tanking conversation?
I don't remember.
Because he demanded I show up. And there's time, like, there have been times, absolutely, where it's not always like, it's actually like, hey, we're good. Like, no, there's times we slam the door on each other. Like, that's part of it as well. But I think that Adam's come up the hard way. He's really earned it, and he's done very, very well. And I'll always remember that, no matter what. And I always remember that he's a good person. And that's one of the things. I know his intentions are pure, even though I completely disagree with him at times. And again, if I didn't like him, I just wouldn't talk to him. I'd just shun him. That's how that works. It's, people bring some stuff up on air and things like that about subjects in the past, and I'll talk about those things, or I'll talk about those people if it gets brought up. But if it's about anybody who I really don't like, I will stay very tight-mouthed about that.
All right, so let's talk about Lima, and then we'll talk about some Brown stuff. And my buddy Lima, how tired are you of hearing about West Juggle Wolverine's lore?
He never brings it up. He never brings anything.
The Wolverina.
He's out
in Chesterland.
He's so fixated on not being a cliche that anything that he stands for, it's always stick and move. It's always that way. I love the man dearly, and he has become he is an enigma that I peel away daily, and I do love him. He's one of my very best friends already, and I'm so amazed because we talk about his personal life and some of his personal feelings, and I come in, I'm like, man, I woke up in the middle of the night last night at 1 a.m. and it was like a couple nights. This was actually a couple weeks ago. It wasn't even like 1 a.m. It was a point of no return, like 2. It's like, well, you're up. Yep. You're going to get up because you're going to get up in 90 minutes anyway. My son's getting sick. He's throwing up on the floor. And then he tells me, he has the stones to tell me, like, oh, yeah, I'm going to have kids someday. I want to have kids someday. I go, you're 5 years older than me. And I cleaned up vomit 90 minutes ago. And you're telling me this? Like, don't mess with my emotions here. Don't do this. And then I look at him and go, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. You've come through all this. Your personal life, I'm not going to speak personally about his personal life or tell any vivid details, but his personal life seems like a vacation compared to what, working stiffs like us got to do. And I'm thinking, and I have no problem with calling him a moron day in and day out about certain things like that. And then there's times where he will surprise me with his warmth, with how much he cares about certain people, because he always gives off this vibe that he doesn't care about anybody but himself, and he's always looking out for number one, and it couldn't be further from the truth. And sometimes I think that affects him because I don't think enough people get to really see that out of him. But I do love him dearly. Well,
and I knew them, and I don't want to talk about him behind his back or anything, but I've had him on this show. But I knew, having known him before he was on the radio and everything else, and having seen him on Twitter and everything, I was like, it's going to take people a while to realize that, he actually does care. He's kind of sarcastic. Mm-hmm. And by kind of sarcastic, I mean completely and utterly sarcastic, especially the Twitter stuff. And that's where I wanted to go next. That's obviously become a big part of being a sports media personality. And I find that, I've met you off the air. I've interacted with you on social media. You're pretty much the same guy everywhere. Did you ever have to think about that, or are you just kind of that's the way you fly?
If you're anybody but yourself, someone's eventually going to find out, and that means that I have bad days just like everybody else. That means that all of us we have our problems, and every now and then someone will get under your skin, and that can bleed over to social media too. And there's times where I have to remind myself, hey, don't take it too seriously. Because the problem I have with Twitter is that I love Twitter, but it's so short, and you don't read an inflection of a voice. Mm-hmm. So that's why a lot of times when I tweet or something, it's either some stupid joke or some observation I make of life. Anything that's a damning hot take, I want to save for the air. And I'll tell you, okay, coming up to 7:40, whatever.
Because then you can put it in your tone of voice.
Because then people can understand. Again, the Ryan Grigson thing. I hope it works out, and I'm glad that there's many people above him that can shoot those ideas down. But if I just say that Ryan Grigson was a terrible general manager and this is going to go horribly for the Browns, well, wait a minute. The Browns have a whole lot of goodwill picking up right here, so let's not get crazy. But somebody can't read my inflection in my voice and say, hey, you know what, let's see how she shakes out and maybe everything will be okay. So,
I thought about that yesterday, too, because when I was tweeting about Grigson, I compared him. I said, if Bernie Madoff worked for an NFL team, somebody would find him a salary and a desk. And somebody, you just compared Ryan Grigson to Bernie Madoff. And, well, kind of. But I'm mocking the NFL for finding a paycheck and a desk for pretty much anybody, mm-hmm. including I believe George Coquina still draws an NFL paycheck somewhere. So that's the league we're talking about. It's kind of funny.
Well, it goes hand in hand with going from nights to mornings, because you think that's the same folks. It's not. You think they know you and they don't. So at the very beginning,
you're talking about the national show.
No, I'm talking about from the night show we did to the morning show, or the night show that I did with Kenny and Chris, and eventually Vic Treviani, and then moving on to the mornings. Is that there are different people who wake up and they do not hear you after 7, so they don't know what you're talking about, and they will take you literally, even though you think you're making a joke. So there was a couple times we had to make some adjustments because there was a lot of people taking words out of context and things like that. Were we just talking sports, whatever? Mm-hmm. And you think they get that joke because I've made the same joke for 3-4 years.
Yep.
But they never heard that joke, and they took it differently. Where somebody who's been listening to me for 3-4 years, they know, it's a joke, but they don't know. So there was a little bit of an adjustment period. Now some people have gotten used to it, and they understand it. But especially with Twitter and the new people that pick into there, is that if I get something really nasty or something like that, I'm like, buddy, could you just calm down? We're just talking sports. And most people are from Cleveland. We want the same thing. I'm not going to call you, unless you were to say something really stupid, I'm not going to call you an idiot because you're sharing an opinion. I'm going to disagree with you, but we're fine, man. It's perfectly fine. I don't know why we need to go after each other's personal lives over here.
It almost feels like that's over. That a lot of that stuff ended. The real nasty stuff.
Oh,
I don't get nearly as much as I used to.
Well, maybe now you get new followers every day, but the people who do follow you, they kind of know you better over time because they get to know you and they get to know what you're about, and they'll either click in or click out or whatever. Usually, what I always feel that, and if it even happens on air or off air, there's some people that are just not going to like you, but it's usually a misunderstanding where they took something I was joking about literally. It's usually about one of their favorite teams because people take their teams very personally,
too seriously at times,
way too seriously.
And I'm including myself. I've done it a lot.
Exactly. And I just go, like, sometimes I'll send something back very snarky to somebody, and they'll get, I'm like, hey, I'm just kidding around. Read that. Usually I'll go, read that a second time, okay? And then put a smile on your face and read it, and then see what you say. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know you were joking. One of them things. Like, yeah, I don't mind it. And I think that Lima got caught into that a couple of times back in the day on Twitter.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, definitely. I think some people do, but overall, the nastiness, I think it comes and goes with the time. If I'm in the middle of a Browns game, or the Cavs game the other night in the first half, oh gosh, just because I said I defended Ty Lue, and then they're getting hammered by 16, and where's your defense now, dummy? And what are you going to say now about a fat ass? I'm going, hey, man, hey, technically, I said his job was tough. I didn't say it was the very best. And then, thank God, they came back and went like, hey, man, I was upset they were losing. I'm like, I get it too, man. I was upset too. Don't worry about it, brother.
Or what does the amount that I eat and drink have to do with any of this?
Oh, hell. That's one of the things. Like, hey, man, I see myself in the mirror every day. I know exactly what I look like. You're not breaking any news to me, man.
All right. So last but not least, in terms of your career stuff, how much do you have to think about the fact that you're part of, like, I don't know, is it the official Browns radio network? I don't know the right terminology, but you work for the team, and you work for and the station's a team partner or whatever, but you also have to have that independent voice that needs to critique the team sometimes, or you don't have to love the hiring of Ryan Grigson. How much do you have to think about that wearing a couple different hats like that? Very little. Okay.
And I can't speak for everybody, obviously, because there's multiple hosts. I do a lot of their programming, obviously, on the radio, but I've had to do very little, and I think, again, it goes back to when we first started talking about it, is that I've always just tried to be fair, okay, and not take pot shots, and then there has to be something there, and it's easier to do it now because the Cavaliers have won and things like that. But you have to find some sort of positivity. I cannot go on the radio every single morning and tell everybody about how bad things are, especially in the morning when they're about to go through a bad day. Okay? Life's as bad enough as it is, and they're coming to me for a reason, because they don't want to go to politics, they don't want to hear about that, or they don't want to hear about the problems that they're about to have at work, so they're coming to me for a reason, for either to laugh, get some information, or get something about their favorite team. So if I'm on there in the fall saying the Browns suck, 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 and they're never going to get better, well, eventually someone's going to get upset about that. So there's always got to be something there that there's a sliver of light down that hallway, and I just got to find it. And I do that with all the teams. I did that with the Indians when they were a 68-win baseball team with Manny Acta. I did that with the Cavaliers when it was Byron Scott standing there with his arm folded, and I had to defend them when they were getting hammered every night. And there's times where, yes, you have to have a hellish rant against them, but there has to be something there that's okay. And I rarely say, unless I really truly believe it. Like Marcus Smart, I thought that game the other night was pure garbage, and I don't really respect him a ton as a basketball player, even though I think if he were to play for the Cavs, he'd actually work out well. But I try not to take too many pot shots here and there. Every now and then, it happens as a joke. It's like, get over it, no big deal. But I think that they've always – I've never had to be pulled into an office ever over that. I've never had to be warned about it ever because I've always just tried to be fair. And I've always with the Browns, they've had so many different regimes.
Oh, yeah.
And I've always tried to be fair. And there was a time with the Indians where, I didn't have an epiphany there, but I started to realize, I go, you know what? I've been sitting here getting all hot and bothered about the Indians. They're the ones who aren't firing general managers and hiring new head coaches all the time over there. And, I know that they're just coming off a 60-plus win season. This is before Tito. I know they're coming off a 60-plus win season, but you know what? Damn it. I don't have to worry about that stuff. And I know that in a couple of years they'll be contenders again anyway. Now, we can get upset about the amount of money they spend. That's one thing. But everything else, they're actually, when I break them down, one got LeBron. The other one's still just waiting for a quarterback. And the other one has actually been a well-run franchise. And so if I can put that up against some of the times that it's there, it can even itself out. Now, if they all did something that was absolutely horrible, I guess I'd have to say it. But I think that fairness has always been my friend, and I've never had to really think about that ever once. Some people think that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. It's good to give people try to give people what they want. It's also good to try to be fair to the teams that people love. They're always going to take their side. They're never going to take mine. So I might as well be fair as I possibly can be.
So, and this also goes to something that I talked about with Aaron Goldhammer. People expect there to be some rivalry between the stations, and like your voice can be heard on both stations because of the Browns radio network and all this other kind of stuff. So once and for all, do you have a rivalry with the other station and other, tell people that like you guys have more in common than you do as competitors.
Well, I host a show with Gerard on the network, so I can't. He beat me badly, so I can't say that I have a problem with him. And Gibbs, Gibbs overall, no, I have a problem with nobody over there. Gibbs overall, now I just said on Twitter a couple days ago that his gut's so big it looks like he's trying to steal a propane tank, like he's smuggling a propane tank out of a gas station. But I do love Jason dearly.
But see previous conversation. If you didn't like him, you wouldn't have said it.
Yeah, these are guys. You look at it as you grow. You just mentioned the 25 to 30 thing. From when you were 20 to 30, I think it's the most important decade of a man's life. Some people would say 30 to 40. I don't know. I just started.
Depends on your maturity level.
Of course. That's a very big thing. But most guys, they start out, they're idiots, and then all of a sudden there's a ring on their finger, and then there's a kid in their arm, and they how did I get here out of nowhere? But I think over that time is that you start to realize that your friends, you still like your friends from back home and stuff like that, and you want to remain close, but things are going to have to change because you're with people all the time. So yeah, Lima has become one of my dearest friends. Kenny is one of my very best friends in my life, kid. And Jason over there has become a very good friend. He's a guy who's one of my bosses. I got many bosses who tell me many things, and many things how things got to go with what we do and what the station's got to do and what the teams have to do. And I've always had a very good relationship with him just because, you do as you're told when it really comes down to it because it's your job to do what you're told. And also it's that I like those guys. I get along with them very well.
It's just so funny. It's so funny because when especially, when 92.3 launched, everyone's going, finally, there's a new team going to put the other one down. And no, there's enough room for everybody.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Everybody's going to have their own preferences and get to listen to everybody or not listen to everybody, and make their own choices. It's just really funny to me. So I always like to ask you guys that stuff.
Oh, gosh. And again, it goes back to the whole thing about no matter what, nobody's for everybody. Okay? Nobody's for it. Like, one of the things, I'll tell you this, I'll admit this. When I first started, I got a really nasty email, like the first weekend, and it was just vicious. And it was like the first real nasty thing I got.
As somebody who loved alternative rock, they were still mad that the music station wasn't there.
This guy,
it was before Spotify. They were upset.
Oh, it was a bunch of cuss words, but I tell you what, there was cuss words in it, but it was written pretty eloquently. So the guy, you could tell, he hated me. I just felt terrible, and so I'll never Google my name and I'll never Twitter search my name, even though I do have a buddy who likes to take screenshots and send it to me. It just make me upset. But
that's a real friend.
I Twitter searched Vin Scully. That's what I did because everybody loves Vin Scully. And I wrote Vin Scully hate. This is back in 2011. And there is just this line. When's this old so-and-so going to retire? Time to put him out there. I hate Vin. I couldn't believe it. I go, if they hate Vin Scully, they are definitely going to hate anybody else. So you better get ready because I'm not out to make them hate me. But at the same time, they're just going to naturally do it. So there's got to be some alternative to some degree, and you hope that the majority of the people like you. But yeah, there's going to be some people who absolutely hate your guts, even though you're trying to say that, hey, don't take it too seriously, and I'll always like you. And they just go, nope, for whatever reason, I can't stand you. All right, that's the way it goes. So be it.
All right, before I do want to talk a couple of Cleveland Browns current event type things. Do you have any idea where you're going to be in 10 years? Any clue at all, or is it
personally or Browns?
Professionally?
Oh,
professionally.
Gosh, no.
Do you have any idea at all, or are you still just kind of taking it as it comes?
You never know. And this area, this
in 10 years is a long time professionally.
It's a long time. I hope that I'm still here. I think a lot of guys, we always want to say, "Well, I call it right down the line." Nah, I'm not that guy. I would say that a lot of people are so focused on not being a homer, they tend to forget where they're at and where they came from. And I've told the story before, and I don't want to get all emotional or mushy about it again because, again, you want to be taken seriously about it. But, my grandfather, I've told this story before, my grandfather was borderline illiterate. I mean, he grew up in the Depression and stuff like that, and he had to quit school in like 8th grade. And, it just wasn't a big deal. So I remember when he found out I got a job here, he was bawling his eyes out. And he was like really excited. I have a cousin Jimmy right there. My cousin Jimmy has more money than God, whatever. But I got a job in Cleveland. And that meant something. Jimmy works in Canton. And to him, this is, again, he was a guy who was born in 1923. So Cleveland to him was Paris. All right? Like it was the big time. And so that was an immensely proud thing for him. My father, obviously, and stuff like that. So if I were to still be here in 10 years and in 20 years, I mean, good God, how lucky could you be? And that means that you're in a very good sports city with people who obviously like you. And if you could be there for a very long time, it would be a blessing. It would absolutely be a blessing. So to say if I know where I'm going to be in 10 years, I don't know. We have no idea how the sports climate goes or how our business goes. I hate saying our business, but that's part of it. But if I was here in 10 years, working at this station, talking to these same people, and talking to people who maybe are 20-something years old right now, just hopefully getting their first jobs to where they have kids and now they're driving in and they're still listening to me and their kids are listening to me, to be in a position where another guy is in Cleveland in sports, I think that would be a dream come true. I would want nothing more than that because I think so many people say it, and it's a cool thing to say how much you love Cleveland here, but it does mean a lot. It means a lot to be here. It means a lot to be with the people here.
It's interesting because I often fantasize like, well, I wonder if I could do my job from San Diego or someplace else and just kind of like, and then you start thinking about all the things that you'd actually be missing from being here in person. And it really does kind of smack you in the face. Like, no, you can't just pick up and be a Clevelander from somewhere else. It's really hard. And that's not to criticize anybody who tries to do it or, is forced to move because of a job and hangs on, listens to you guys on the internet or reads our website from far away because they're forced to or because their life situation is dictated such. But it's not easy. It's hard to do. So I think there's a lot of truth to that.
And maybe to some people, maybe to them, I'm not shooting high enough. I don't know what it is. If I had to do what I had to do someday, then I guess I got to do what I got to do. But just with this region, with these people, to get like the personal stories and stuff like that, these are neighbors, man. These are friends and family, and eventually my sons will grow up with their sons. So to me, it's a dream, and because I lived it, man. I went to the old stadium, and now some of these guys who were in the section over there, and they were grown men, and I was 5 years old. Now they listen to me in the morning, like a guy like Nick and Giaga and stuff like that. Like that should be an honor. That should really be an honor. That's something that's protected and should never ever be taken for granted. And there's sometimes I'll be honest with you again. I mentioned I have bad days just like anybody. There's times where I do take it for granted, and I can't stand that because I've been laid off and I know what it's like, and I think it's a horrible feeling. And so to be in the city where you grew up wanting to be there, it should every single day be a culmination, but also a dream coming true, and it should be something that you build upon. So if I'm here in 10 years, in 20 years, hopefully in 30 years, I'd love every single second of it.
All right, longtime listeners of the podcast know that my wife is from Indianapolis, so I follow the Colts a little bit. I have been telling her and my brother-in-law for 3 years that they're going nowhere with Ryan Grigson. Nowhere. And this isn't because of the Trent Richardson trade. I think you can still defend the Trent Richardson trade.
I don't even blame him. I blame the owner.
Yeah, well, and I think Trent deserves some blame for imploding his own career, and he never should have ended up being as bad a player as he did. It was a lot of off-the-field stuff. Things happen that are beyond the control, of GM and whatever else. But his overall team-building philosophy was abysmal. To win the lottery and end up with a guy who could potentially be a generational type quarterback in Andrew Luck and not do anything to surround him is a crime. And so the Browns hired that guy. And I've already kind of talked myself into it, like, oh, this is just a good old boy network hiring. They give him a paycheck and a job while not giving him any actual responsibility. It's the Eric Mangini principle. You love having Eric Mangini on your staff as long as he's not the leader. He's not your head coach. Mm-hmm. So that's the way I'm talking myself into it. But there's no good news about this. No,
and I think that it was amazing to me. Is that, well, he's not going to have much of an influence. Yeah, but he has some influence, or they wouldn't have the position there, right?
Right.
So, all right. Do I like Andrew Berry? Yeah, I like Andrew Berry. I think Andrew's a good dude, and I think he's a smart guy, and Andrew worked for him in Indianapolis. So if I don't like Ryan Grigson, that can't mean I don't like Andrew Berry, too. And I'm thinking in a lot of ways, I actually rationalized this on air today, is I can't rationalize it because bad's bad, and the guy was a bad general manager. I'm not going to put lipstick on the pig. He was bad at what he did, and it scares me, all right? But I think about it like this. If you're in a position of power, there's going to be people who don't like you. So if I became a program director somewhere else, I know that there's always going to be people, and I love Andy, but I know there's people who don't like Andy. If I became a program director and Andy was on the move, I'd hire Andy. Whatever. I'd hire him because he's good. I know he's good. I worked with him. Even though somebody else might see it and they go, what are you doing? That's crazy. What, are you nuts? Because not everybody's going to like you.
Yeah, there's a Reggie Wayne, there's a Pat McAfee.
Exactly. Yeah, oh gosh.
Those guys despise Ryan Grigson.
Because again, let me leave it to just simple football. Is that we always best player available. Got to take the best player available. Well, the best player available technically should help out your quarterback. But when you have a quarterback, and you know you have a quarterback, the best player available is out the window. You are there to build around your quarterback, to protect that guy, and then to take time away from another quarterback and help that guy. And the only thing Ryan Grigson did with Andrew Luck was make us doubt him.
Yeah.
That's it. Here you had the best prospect since John Elway. And the only thing we do now with Andrew Luck is go, you know what? Is he going to get over the hump? Russell Wilson did.
They turn him into Tim Couch.
Exactly. I go, gosh, you had a ruptured spleen or whatever it was? I forget the injury. I know it was an internal organ. I know that's a bad thing.
Perforated, I believe.
Yeah, perforated spleen.
I don't know what that even means, but I don't want any of my internal organs perforated.
It's awful. And so, yes, I'm terrified of that. And the only thing that, again, gives me any sort of comfort is that I had a list given to me by somebody because they heard me losing it, and I was on my way over here. They heard me losing it this morning because I just, I lost it again. And they go, listen, this is the people who are above him. There was like 6 names. Mm-hmm. I says, okay, that makes me feel a little bit better, but he's still going to be up there somewhere, and I got to look by him walking by me, and I'm just going to go, what are you doing to destroy what I think actually has some hope for the first time in a long time? What are you doing? What are you going to do today to ruin my hopes and dreams and all these fans' dreams. Like, I will always have that in the back of my head until I don't, until they win and they go, and they will, they better do it. Because if he helped them out, they got to go, well, you see, that was Ryan Grigson's pick. They'll point it out. They'll do it.
Oh, yeah.
He's got to put his reputation back together. So until they do that, I'm going to.
It's so funny, though, because in any other line of work, there are things that you can do that you cannot come back from. Like if you are a cook on the line and they give you a promotion from fry cook to burger cook and you send something out that makes somebody sick, you're done. Yeah. You're done. You're just not going to get another job in that thing. Yeah. In the NFL, there's always a place for you. There's always a paycheck for you somewhere. As long as you don't burn every possible bridge by dropping a nuclear bomb someplace, they're going to find a job for you.
Well, once you're in, you're in. You'll always be taken care of.
It's hysterical to me.
But it's the same thing because we always bring up Ray Farmer. And I think once Ray Farmer's getting done being paid by the Browns, he'll probably get himself another job. He should be able to get himself another job.
Maybe.
If he wants to.
Grigson's getting that Indianapolis money. He found another job.
Yeah, I do think, though, that with Ray, because Ray takes the seat for Johnny Manziel. I don't think Ray drafted Johnny. And they'll tell me till they're blue in the face that Ray was the one who drafted Johnny. I don't think he did. I think he took the fall because he's going to want another job. And if you go against the ownership, good luck, because that's a very tight-knit group. And even if they don't really like each other, if they know that a guy's going to throw one of them under the bus,
oh, forget it.
Yeah. So again, I think that I don't think Ryan Grigson made the trade for Trent Richardson.
I interview people for jobs all the time.
Yeah.
If they trash their previous boss, unless I know that boss personally and I know that they're right, that's a warning sign. I probably won't hire that person because someday they're going to be doing that to me.
Oh yeah. And I still say this is that you got Jimmer say right before this trade's complete, we're building a monster here. You kidding me?
Uh-huh.
Like, this is the owner of the football team tweeting out, oh, get ready. Really? Over this trade? And I'm thinking, that had to be Jim. So I look at the 2013 draft and I go, man, even Joe Banner's players, some of those guys are still in the NFL right now. But his 13 draft, that's a case closed. That's bad. So there's the only thing I will defend him on is I think that Jim Irsay was the one who made that trade. Other than that, it's still not a good track record whatsoever.
No, it's definitely not. I before I got here, I was crafting a quote unquote hot take that I don't think is going to be all that hot, but I want to see what you think. I think the Browns should probably just go ahead and cut Brock Osweiler right now. I saw that tape, and I know Doug LeMarie can be a little bit contentious, and I know he kind of went at Brock Osweiler a little bit. But the bad attitude that we've heard about with Brock Osweiler, the bad attitude, the same guy who fought with Bill O'Brien in Week 5 over play calling and then fought with him again Week 17 after being called in to back up Tom Savage. This guy doesn't need more time. He doesn't need better coaching. He's a bad guy. He's not somebody you can build around, and they should just stop wasting their time. There's not enough of a ceiling there. He's not an asset. There's no way to flip him, trade him, do anything with him. I think it's written.
Well, Bill O'Brien does have a history with some quarterbacks,
Yep.
I mean, that's
how about
right.
John Elway? Does John Elway have a history too?
No, but he did offer him $15 million. That was an offer. That was a serious offer that he was like, listen, I'll give you $15 million a year. And he turned that down for $16 million. So I know John Elway's great. Whatever.
And who trashed John Elway on their way out the door?
Brock Osweiler.
Well,
yeah, because he was upset that he wasn't playing. Here, why am I defending Brock Osweiler? Why would you make me defend Brock Osweiler?
What would Ken do?
I would keep him around until camp.
No. If you signed a deal with Houston for $18 million to leave the world champion Denver Broncos, what would you say about Denver as you were signing your deal in Houston?
I'd probably try to be quiet.
You'd say nothing. Me too. And so would anybody else who's not a jerk.
No, wait a minute. You're right. You are right. But going forward here, if he's got a chip on his shoulder already, which he did because he wanted to play, and he was playing, and he was playing well that year in Denver when Peyton Manning went in. And I bet there's something in there with him that he might be a little bit disappointed that Peyton Manning won that game. Even though I think if he played in that Super Bowl, I don't think they would have won. I think he'd have turned the ball over and they'd have lost.
Yep.
But I think for him, you got to have some cockiness. You have to have some arrogance and brashness because he's a guy. I don't have to grab anybody. I don't have to grab many people. by the face mask and say, let's go. And that sometimes you have to have some leadership in what we do, but for him, it's a different role. So there has to be some brashness and some arrogance there. So I don't care that he said, I wish he wouldn't have said check the tape, but I don't care that he thinks he's a good quarterback. I didn't understand it, and you know what? You won't bring up Adam. I couldn't understand Adam yesterday screaming about it, saying how bad it wasn't going. He thinks he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. He was a starting quarterback in the NFL. I'd be pretty upset, too, if I just signed this major deal for $72 million and I get traded to a 1-15 football team that has been talking nonstop about finding a quarterback like we're out there in the desert trying to find water for 30 years, and they don't even want me. Yes, I'd be upset about that if I was Brown.
Brock Osweiler thinks he's a victim rather than making his own luck.
The beauty of that is that if he really becomes a problem in there, they can just cut him.
Yep.
And I don't think, and because of the type of coach that Hugh is, I don't think Hugh's beholden to his talent at all.
No.
And I think that Hugh has Cody that he would like to develop. I really do think he would. And I think that Hugh has Deshaun that he definitely wants to develop. And I think that if Brock Osweiler gets into it with one of us, that's a much different thing than getting into it with one of them. He gets into it with one of them, he'll get sent home and he'll get his money, and that'll be the end of it.
Well, let me just say, I think the proof is there. I think he will get into it with one of them. I think he's delusional. I think he's not. I think he's exactly the same guy that has been basically, run out of the last two places. And you can say that Denver offered him and would have liked to keep him, but I think they're thinking they're lucky stars he went and signed somewhere else.
If they let him. They didn't make the playoffs either last year, so it's not like Trevor Siemian is some great big godsend. If they let that guy derail this, because I don't know where you feel about where the Browns are. I think it's going to be a long build in there. I heard what Zach said to you. Yeah, they're acting like they got all the time in the world. I do listen. I told you.
Yeah.
They're acting like they got all the time in the world. And I hope they do, because when you tear it down to these bolts, buddy, you better have some time to build it back up. Because if we're talking about win totals that you have to reach this year, you are in big trouble. And we're in big trouble. We're going to do all this again, and you're going to even ruin your reputation. Whatever you had left, you're going to even ruin it more to that fan base there that have been put through hell. And that scares me. But if they let a backup quarterback, I don't care how much you're paying him, because I don't think many people do bring up the salary. If you let him tear things down, then we are wasting our time to begin with here. And we wasted each other's time even talking about him. So that's why I think that there is no way in hell I'd let Brock Osweiler ruin everything that they are diligently, and I mean diligently, working on to try to pull this thing out of the gutter for the first time in 20 years.
Yeah.
No way you let a guy like that do it.
I look at you're right.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, our position as Browns fans we've seen all the different types of candidates from Brandon Weeden to Jason Campbell, the backups to the late-rounded players, mm-hmm. Charlie Fry, we've seen it all. I can smell this one a mile away. This guy has nothing. He's not gonna deliver anything positive for this team. And even if he ended up playing a good game, he'd screw it up in the post-game interview. He's just there's.
I didn't even think about that.
Let me
start taking shots at Bill O'Brien. What if he played in Pittsburgh and won?
How many times have you talked Browns on the radio and had somebody call him? Well, you know what? If we need to see. We need to be patient and see. And you know what?
I'm not going.
When you saw Brandon Weeden play,
mm-hmm.
it wasn't a wait and see. You knew.
You knew. No, I disagree, sir. No way. And I'll bring Lima into this. So we've said this on the show. I know it, so I can say I love saying to myself, I know we've said this, so I can tell you. That's okay. One time when Brandon, this is after Philly and everything. Lima walked in. I remember I had to do post game for whatever reason that day, and Lima comes in, and Lima had a few, and he's waiting on a ride to come pick him up because
mm-hmm.
he was not going to drive, and he was being responsible about it. And he's like, "Well, I'm just going to go wait, sitting there and wait with the guys." But he had a few, and he wasn't like falling over or anything. But yeah,
he's a little loose.
Yeah, Mr. Belvedere was talking a little bit, so he sits there and goes, "What are we going to do, man? What are we going to do?" I says, "What?" He goes, "We don't have quarterbacks to talk about anymore." I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "This guy's good. You can't deny this guy's talent." I think it was actually Cincinnati the next week. He goes, "You can't deny this guy." This is Anthony saying this who hates every quarterback.
He does.
And it's amazing. He loves them all. He loves them all in the wintertime, and he hates them by the time camp starts. But he's going, what are we going to do? He solved it. He goes, they're going to lose. But, man, this guy's got it. And I go, I'm glad you're calling a ride because you're either dumb or loaded or both for saying what you're saying to me right now. And he goes, no, look at that arm. I mean, he was adamant. Nope, fix it. So he was one. And then because he played, remember, he had over 300 yards that game.
Yeah.
And we had calls the very next night. Oh, just see it. We got the guy. Of course, because he's a Browns quarterback and he could kick your neighbor's dog, but you would still want him to go, okay, can he win? Can he do this? Because we've been talking about quarterbacks for way too long here. Let's see if a guy can work out. I thought some people liked him. I didn't like him from the get-go. I thought he was too old, and I was going to teach that old dog new tricks. And I'm not happy I won the pony on that one, but I didn't think very. I'm in your camp about him, but at the same time, I think some people did think he could work it out. All
right, so so you actually think Brock Osweiler has a chance to do something?
No, very little.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to.
And if he's a bad attitude on top of it, we kicked.
It's bad attitude with us.
Those tires been kicked,
it's man. It's a bad attitude with us.
And a history of a bad attitude everywhere.
And you notice, and it wasn't like the Browns didn't know this beforehand.
I know.
Because if they thought that he was worth something, that would have been on the top. That was at the bottom. It was the last line. There was a quote. They said for a second-round pick, and there was this quote from Sashi in their release. That's how I remember it, so I'm probably taking a couple of liberties here. I apologize. But there was the first line, then this paragraph that Sashi said about getting the pick and getting more draft capital, and then there was like, by the way, they got Brock Osweiler. I'm thinking, they know what you're talking about. So if he was supposed to be the quarterback whisperer. He's the guy who brought in Robert, and I thought, to be honest with you, I thought Robert's attitude wasn't that great. But I thought that he thinks that if he can help him, he's going to help him. If he's not, he'll cut him in the preseason, and they'll go with Cody, and they'll go with Deshaun, and they'll go with Kevin Hogan. Because I think this is still set up to fast-track Deshaun into some sort of a role to be the quarterback for them. Yeah. I hope it's not week one right now because I watched him yesterday, and I thought there were some passes that were just head and shoulders above the rest, and there was a couple passes that you could tell that he's a rookie and he's trying to let it fly. So I hope it's not week one, but I think at some point, you're trying to give him confidence, and he'll be put in there. You'll get to see him sooner rather than later, I think, because he's got some talent. That kid can throw it. He's got some talent there. He's got to have to harness it.
So it sounds like we just disagree on timing.
Yeah. What if they cut him? Are we supposed to send you a mean tweet? No, exactly. And the Browns aren't idiots for cutting him either. They got their second-round pick.
Yep.
They have all the money in the world. I'm fine with it. Go ahead and if you feel that he's that big of a problem, if I keep hearing some wind and they finally go, you know what, we're done with you, like they did with Ben Tate a couple of years ago, then get the hell out of here. I don't care. It would. I
think you just changed my conclusion for me. Like it's less about the Browns don't have to cut him now, but so help me. If I read one tweet or hear one thing from a Browns fan who goes, well, maybe Brock Osweiler could be the answer. If I hear one iota of that, you should uppercut yourself.
No, he has to change it. He would have to change that. But if you're getting cut by the Browns, again, they've needed a quarterback for longer than as long as I've been alive. Well, okay, I was about 5.
Yeah.
When they started to need a quarterback again.
Yep.
For as long as I've been alive, basically, or cognizant of football, they've needed a quarterback. And if you're getting cut by them, buddy, it's over. It's done. So that's on him, not on the Browns.
Dude, this has been an absolute pleasure.
We're done?
Dude, it's an hour and 3 minutes.
Are you serious?
An hour and 3 minutes. Ken Carman of the Ken Carman Show with Anthony Lima, 92.3 The Fan.
Or Indians?
No, they're just people just like them. We just like them right now. There's nothing to talk about.
You don't have one? Did you have a question for either one?
No, I wasn't even necessarily going to go into any current events. I just wanted to talk to you about your career and all that kind of stuff. But then you brought up Grigson, and I had some. I've been angry lately. I've had a lot of angry takes lately. I went on a diatribe recently about people backing into parking spots.
Tell me about it.
Don't ever back into a parking spot unless you're like at a big festival. It says a lot about the person who backs into a parking spot. It's very self-important.
Whoa, wait a minute. Backing in?
Yeah.
Really?
Yep. Just pull in like everybody else and back out at the end.
If you're up against wait a minute. So if you're up against a sidewalk, if you're up against a sidewalk You don't like backing in?
It's very self-important.
Oh,
you make
man,
everybody
you hate
wait.
my guts.
Yeah, maybe. Two of my good friends came out against me.
Why?
And then they ran a poll, and like 65% of people hate people who back into spots.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's just because they can't back in. It's safer.
No. It's not safer.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
How is it safer?
I completely disagree. Because if you pull in, first off, if you pull in, now, I feel it's easier to back a truck in. I drive a truck. If I back my truck in, I feel it's easier. And then I don't have to do that. I'm fat, so I got to do this whole like around thing. And so I got to check. And if there's any blind spot, there's always going to be a guy who pops into it. And then you're back, and you got to do that wave thing. Because again, it's 2017. You have no idea who's a lunatic and who's not. So you better do the wave thing. I don't like discourteous drivers. If I know I messed up, I will wave and give them the wave and say I'm sorry. It's just so much easier to start her up, look left, look right, see nobody, and pull out.
So it takes longer to back in than it would to back out at the end.
Definitely.
And number two, I believe you when you say safety, but safety is the go-to thing. It's safer.
I feel it's safe.
Half the people who say it's safer do not care about safety. One of my best friends who one of my best friends who I was arguing with this about on Twitter the afternoon that I lost it was tweeting at me while driving home that day. He was claiming safety. I know safety is BS for a lot of the people claiming safety. I believe it when you say it.
I used to be one of the most habitual. Having kids will change your entire perspective. Because like when we bought our house over there, right? And my dog came out, and I was like, hey, he's okay. Well, the dog across the way came out of his house and was loose because they have a fenced yard. Sam runs over there, and they start barking, and I get mad. I'm thinking, Kenny, man, you got to pay attention. It's not just your family. It's everybody else's. You're a dad. You got to pay attention to this stuff. Like, I'm talking to myself. Like, don't be a dummy. Do this. And part of it was, like, texting and driving. Like, you got to put the phone down here. You got kids in the back seat. You got another person over there. They might have kids in their car here. You won't kill somebody if you don't watch out. But everybody lives in their own personal bubble. So that I get. But if you're talking about safety, it is – I don't care about the time that it takes. A job done right is worth doing a little bit longer. All right? So I'm fine with that. But
that's a very lunch pail of you.
Thank you very much. But looking back and forth, no, I got no problem with that. Just do it right. Just consider who might be backing in. I like you. You seem to like me all right, and I back in every chance I get.
All right. All right. Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
I know you're trying to wrap up, but now I just want to hear about your life.
Yeah?
Yeah. What got you into doing this?
I always wanted to be on the radio. Why didn't you just do it? I had a real job all the time, and came up with, podcasting started up, and I was like, I think I could do this. And I've been on the radio a little bit, and I've talked around to different people about being on, and it's kind of nice to be able to do it at my own pace, by my own conditions, because again, like we talked about, nobody's becoming a millionaire on the radio unless they're the 1/10 of a 1%, like Jim Rome and Howard Stern and Bomani Jones and people like that.
And this is the beautiful thing about this, honestly, is that, and before I used to, like Sports by Brooks, I remember I had this big long thing. I used to really distrust blogs. I used to really distrust them because they didn't have to fact check. And now I think that things have changed so much is that the fan and the listener holds blogs accountable now, which I think is great. Because now you have a voice, and people know who you are, and people know what WFNY is, and we're in the scene building. People sure as hell know what Scene Magazine is. So I think that's a good thing. And then you're able to do this because you said, I got a real job there. It's like, isn't it kind of like acting? Like you always kind of want to do it, and then you're like, well, and I'll never fault anybody for making sure they're secure. Well, at the beginning, you're not going to make it.
Let me clarify. Yeah. You have a real job. But to get into radio, you have to take those like part-time. It doesn't become a real job until you graduate. So like so many of these guys who like do weekend shows, they have to make ends meet someplace else and hopefully turn it into a full-time gig later. I'm not saying like radio's not a real job. I'm just saying like
I know.
You have to have a real job while you do radio on the side.
No, don't take any offense to that. No, excuse me, I didn't take any offense.
I just didn't want anybody to think that I was saying like, what Ken does, that's not a real job.
Because I told you when I got laid off, my wife was relieved because we were getting married in 3 weeks.
Maybe you'll have a job with benefits now.
Exactly. That's what she thought. She goes, he's going to stop messing around with this ridiculous crap.
Maybe they'll have an IRA, a 401k.
Yeah. He'll go put on a suit, and I was like, no, I'm probably going to go work at the bread factory. Like, that's the way I was thinking about it, but I was like, hey, you know what? My father-in-law has been at the bread factory for 40 years, and this house is pretty kick-ass, and he gets to do what he wants, so I'll be okay with that. But that's the way I thought about it at that time. But I don't blame anybody. I had a buddy of mine who came up to us one day when we were in college. He goes, guys, I'm leaving the station. It was a college radio station.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, why, Dan? You're a good dude. He actually does real estate downtown now. And we go, his name was Dan, and we go, why? And he goes, honestly, I thought I was going to make way more money coming out than I did, and I don't love it enough. Like, I love sports, but I don't love this enough, and I need to go make money. And I was like, all right. I did not. And people were like, I can't believe he would do that.
That's really great self-awareness, though.
Thank God.
Power to him.
I fault nobody for chasing money on that stuff. I fault nobody.
Well, and you got to measure your own love too. Like I went through this back when because I'm a musician too. I had a band called The Company Line, and we played around town. We played some awful weeknight gigs and whatever else.
Line? What'd you play?
I play guitar and I sing. I wrote all the songs and everything.
What type of voice did you have? Can you compare?
No, I don't really know.
Did you just try to do it to see how you sounded?
No.
You went,
No, I don't really know. I don't know what I would compare myself to, but you can. I'm still on Spotify, The Company Line. But anyway, so after doing that for like 4 or 5 years, I'll text it to you. You don't have to read it.
I got Spotify right now. Keep going. I'm listening.
So, but after doing it for 4 or 5 years and showing up to a club and loading in at 7 and waiting to play for 35 minutes at 10 o'clock and then maybe making $40 between 4 of us, I didn't have the love for that either. And so, at a certain point, you just got to figure out what it's worth to you, and I love making music. I love the fact that I did it, but man, it was never going to be about the money. I was never good enough that I was going to be the next Smashing Pumpkins and playing basketball arenas. So you just gotta find out where your limits are.
That's another one of those things. You said you're 38, right?
Yeah.
You're okay with your
No, I'm good.
You can edit it out.
I'm 38. I was born in 1979.
Okay. Because there's so many guys. If I was 20, I go, man, that guy, no offense. That guy's a sap. Why didn't he try to go out there and make it? Mm-hmm. And I sit here and I got kids myself, and I got a wife, and you got a house. You go, yeah, he's a smart guy. He's a really smart guy. He gets to do. I'm serious about this. I'm going to commend you here because I've read your stuff for a long time. You guys are one of the blogs that started to change my opinion towards blogs. And in one of the websites, because at first I called it a blog. It's not a blog anymore. It's a website.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
You guys do well. And you and Scott and you guys there who just, I see your stuff. I see the videos. I see the reading there. And then I'm going, well, he's got the best of both worlds. He gets to do it when he wants to. And he gets to have fun with it. Now I look, but if I was looking at it 20, I go, man, what are you doing? Now I look at you at 30, I go, yep, he's got it. Which, by the way, I got your list up here. So which one do you want me to play here?
I'm going to turn off the mics.
What? No.
I don't know. The one with the weird.
This is We Move On. Is this it?
Yeah, that's one of them. Yeah, that's.
You'll edit this out. Are you going to edit this out?
No, of course not.
This is you?
Yeah, that's me. I play guitar. This is really funny. I'm turning red now.
Oh my God!
It's a real band.
Craig, you never told me this.
No, I don't put it out that much.
You put an album out just 3 years ago. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit.
Yeah.
This is you, brother.
That's me. This is magical, man. You turned it right around on me. You turned me into the subject. I'm supposed to be talking about you.
Listen to you talking over it like you don't want me to hear. How many guys you got in your band?
There was 4 of us. Yeah.
You guys, obviously, you guys still play and everything. Like you don't play anymore.
No, we'll get it back together.
Life moving on, brother. I'm not.
I'm doing my own backgrounds too.
Yeah. Don't seriously. Don't get mad at me at all. Please
No.
don't,
Of course not.
I can't play anything, and my parents got me a guitar back in the day. I was like, yeah, I want to learn how to play guitar, and I suck. I'm horrible at it. So anybody who can play with any sort of rhythm whatsoever, I'm serious. I like this.
I started out playing drums, and I'm trying to pass that on to the kids.
Yeah.
That's the big thing, man. I want them to. I don't know. I'm almost trying to short sell it so that they'll want to do it. Like if I'm too, no, you got to learn to play piano because when you're 14, the girls will love that you'll be able to play the pop song. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm trying to sell it to the kids because I think they really will love it, and I think it's a skill that just. I didn't learn to play guitar until I was in my 20s.
Really?
Yeah.
I always thought of Jack Black. That's why, because Jack Black didn't learn until he was like 23.
Oh, and I saw Tenacious D play back in like 2002.
Live?
Oh yeah, in Boston. It was amazing. I love Jack Black. Some people turned on him. I still love Jack Black.
I still love him. I haven't turned on him once. I don't care. Because he had a couple of serious roles or whatever. Did you see him in Bernie, by the way, that movie?
No.
It's technically, I think it's, I guess I would call it a biopic.
Yeah.
It's about a guy named Bernie Tiede who he was basically like this live-in. He turned into he was a assistant mortician, whatever, and he is brilliant in this role. I mean, he's very, very good. And this guy in real life, he lives with this old woman. He kills this old woman. And there was this big thing in Texas. I know you keep checking your clock. I'm sorry.
No.
There's this big thing in Texas about because the people thought that the woman was a horrible person, thought he was nice, and that he was driven to do it. So Matthew McConaughey's in it. He's very good in it. He's very good. I love Jack Black.
I gotta check that out. Go ahead.
Go ahead. What are you going to say?
No, go ahead.
I was going to ask you a question about kids.
No, do it.
Okay, your kids are both under 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the athleticism with your children?
Questionable.
Yeah.
Questionable.
Did you want them to play sports?
I mean, we're still trying to feel it out a little bit. I get surprised all the time. I played soccer as a kid, and I have I have a JV level of athleticism for most things. So I was able to play a little bit of tennis, a little bit of this, that, the other thing. And I never expected it, but my 7-year-old can turn on a baseball. And so we're going to find out, but he's 7 and we're still feeling it out. He's not the fastest kid. He's not the most aggressive kid, but you just never know. You never know. You think you're going to know and you think you're going to want to know. And even trying to have a hardline stance on whether I'd let him play football or not. Now I'm just kind of like, well, certainly we'll talk about it when they're like 13.
Mom makes that decision though, doesn't she?
Kind of. But there's no need to talk about it until they're like 13 or 14 anyway, because I can honestly say I'm not going to suit them up in pads and helmet at like 6 and 7 the way they used to. That's
one of the things Bull and I got into it about. We got into that off air once because it was something where he's not going to let his kid. And by the way, his son is his son. He can do whatever he wants. He's
absolutely.
And I love Adam, and I love his family no matter what. But he asked me, and I said, absolutely, I'll let him play. Let him play. And I was like, and he's like, really? Why? Like that type of thing. And he's like, I heard the dusted. He's got the concussions. I go, I understand. I get that. I said, but he could go on a skateboard and ride in front of a car. Like he could do a lot of things that could hurt himself. If he really, really wants to play, I would never force him to try to play. Like I loved football, and I was bad at it. I was not good.
No,
I wasn't good. I always admit that because I'm so close to my hometown, I can't do a Skip Bayless and even lie there. But I said I would want him to play, but that's a sport. It's so physical. Like every sport has its torture, but because it's so physical like that, and wrestling and things like that.
Oh, it's a different commitment level.
Oh God! And I go, it's just not for everybody. It's just not for everybody. So it's one thing that, and I grew up. I'm from Canton. And it's a we're all crazy here about football in Northeast Ohio, but there was a lot of kids, and I have no problem saying they did not want to play football, and their dads made them play. And I don't think it would be that way with this generation, but I remember there was kids out there, and it was just because their dads wanted it, and they hated it. And I loved every second of it, so they were tackling dummies all the way up through. Because my dad was pretty cool with it. He didn't really care.
Even at little old West Geauga, when I played soccer, I was coming off my freshman year. I played varsity my freshman year, so I was really proud of myself. Mm-hmm. I was doing really well and everything. And even back then, a couple of the football coaches were like, "You're too good an athlete to play soccer. You got to come play football." And there's that football attitude has reigned supreme in Ohio for generation upon generation. Like, what are you wasting your time for in this other sport when you could be playing football?
Well, because I became much more open-minded about football, or much more open-minded about it. I used to be really anti-soccer until college. And then I got a chance to talk to Caleb Porter, I think he's still with the Portland Timbers. And he changed he changed a lot of it. He made me respect it. Like, I'm not going to sit down and get my scarf out and go crazy or whatever. I'm just not that guy.
No.
But I respect it. I respect the hell out of it. And I used to not. And I grew up in a time, which wasn't that long ago, where if you played soccer, you were words that we can't say on.
Oh yeah, the other F word.
Oh yeah.
Those two words. When I went to high school, those two words went together for some people.
I couldn't believe it, and because I think about that right now, and I go, I hate admitting it, but it's absolutely true. And some people go, okay, Ken, you say football. Well, what would you do if your son played soccer? And I go, one, he is not even 2, and he's able to dribble it, run. I think he'll play soccer because he's able to do it already. And go, at least he's doing something. I want him to be in something with teamwork, whatever, where he can at least learn to interact with people. So I just got to remind myself that he's not the next Browns quarterback, and he's not the next Pele, and he's not the next, more than likely, not the next Andrew Miller. And I got to enjoy it for what it is and not get in the coach's way if I can't coach or whatever, and just because I do not want to be overbearing, angry dad. That's the one thing I can be. I can deal with any guy on Twitter call me an a-hole, but if you're calling me an a-hole dad, that's a whole other issue.
Well, and if you really want to get what you want in terms of winning the hearts and minds of your kids, it takes a very specific kind of philosophy. Like, if you want to be a Browns fan, you can't force them to be a Browns fan. I faced this with Pokemon. I hate Pokemon. I hate it. I hate Pokemon Go. I hate the cards. I hate the cartoons. Like, from when I was a kid, I graduated high school and Pokemon didn't really exist yet. So I come from a post-Pokemon generation, and my kid loves Pokemon. He loves it. He loves Pokemon Go. He talks about, well, this one levels up to this, and this one evolves to that. And I'm going, I hate it. If I could ban it, I would ban it, but you can't. You have to redirect. You have to, like, find things alternatives. You have to, like, try and give them other things that.
We haven't got there yet. He likes Daniel Tiger, and I have no problem with Daniel Tiger.
Daniel Tiger's lovely.
Yeah.
But wait till he loves something. He's like, couldn't you just love basketball cards? Couldn't we just do, like, baseball or football cards? Why has it got to be Pokemon? You know, and you're spending $6 a pack or $5 a pack on something that you place no value in the universe on.
Baskin was telling me about hockey and the expense it's on. Because I never played hockey. I never learned how to skate. And I was like, man, if I could go back, I wish I could play hockey. And he's like, you want to get another job? I was like, what? He's like, yeah.
It's like $1,000 in gear.
I couldn't believe it. Oh, easily.
And then ice time, you have to pay every time they practice.
He said there's been a couple of trips. It's just $1,000 out of pocket a kid. Because they'll have to go to New York State, and they'll have to do that. And it's like, yep, it's going to cost you $2,000 for them both. And
that's not even counting, like, your meals out, and your hotels, and your gas, and it's crazy.
I'm going, man, Basket does a lot. Everybody gives me like, man, Ken, you do a lot of shows. I go, yeah. And I go, Basket is up until 2 a.m. and then does the midday, and then does it all over again 6 days a week. And I'm going, oh, yeah, there's a reason he does it. Because he's a good dad, and he loves his kids, so. At least he has a reason. I'm just selfish.
That's the other thing. The other thing I learned about parenting, I learned from an interview with Jay Moore on Ron Bennington's show. This is Ron Bennington's Sirius XM host, and you know what it costs to raise a kid or a family of kids?
How much?
All of it. It doesn't matter who you are, how much you make. It's all of it. It's all of it. You could be making $22,000 a year in one job and another $18,000 a year in another job, or you could be making $150,000 a year. It's all of it.
You're 38.
Yep.
Your friend's situation. Do you have many married friends that have kids?
All my friends are. I have my friends that I've collected over the years, and they're still my friends. But my active friends, we all have first graders.
See, this is weird. My wife, her best friends, none of them have kids. And me and my best friends, my buddy Jake has two girls. My buddy Kyle has a boy and a girl, and that's about it. and the rest are kind of dragging their feet to get married in the first place. And I'm not trying to go, hey, you got to have some kids, because no, you know what? Sometimes kids are great, and I love my boys, but sometimes having kids sucks.
Oh yeah,
right? It absolutely sucks. So take advantage of the time you have. But I think there is a little bit of a difference where I got married at 25. I started having kids. My wife and I started having kids at 28, and like we look at it and we're like, when's going to join the club here, huh? Like, we're just going to be, and they're like, no, we're getting around to it, and it's always the same reason. Well, we're waiting, we're not ready yet. And it's like, you keep waiting, and I don't know if you're ever going to be ready. It just, you kind of got to jump into it.
This is one of my favorite things about parenting, though, is like finally leveling up to the point where you're willing to admit when like the thing that you did on a Saturday in July that was supposed to be fun was just awful, and nobody had a good time, and the kids were awful, and you were arguing with your wife, and so we finally stopped pretending, because there's this idea like, oh, I'm going to take a cute picture of my kid at the Geauga County Fair. The Geauga County Fair sucks. Okay, for my family and our experiences there, it has been nothing but disaster. The kids go gimme crazy. They don't like any of the food. The smells of the barn make me want to throw up because I got a weak stomach.
Oh,
so I'm not saying it sucks for everybody, but we finally had to admit to ourselves that going to the fair, not a good deal for the Lindell family,
Canfield Fair, which is a big fair out in Mahoney County. And Liz always wants to go. And we go there, and I swear to God, we finally, since we've like moved, like now she doesn't want to go, but she always wants to go. And you know
what'd be really fun this weekend? What if we went to the fair?
I know what happens every time. First of all, it takes forever to park. Then you park it out in Egypt, so you got to walk all the way.
The Geauga County Fair, the best deal is to park in some dude's front yard. Oh, God. They turn all their yards into parking lots right across the street.
Yeah, they have it right over there by Canfield, too.
Oh.
And you get there, and I hope I'm not saying anything that's going to get me in real trouble here. It's gonna get you on Deadspin by the end of the week. Yeah. Fair people are my people. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. I grew up with some less educated folks, and they have more wisdom. They're wise, but as far as history and math and stuff like that, it didn't. No. So there's life experience there, but there's not a lot of other, and they tend to be a little bit more rural. Okay.
Sure.
Well, Liz kind of starts smelling the same thing like you do, and once I start getting in and start getting fun, we're 5 minutes in, she wants to get the hell out of there. So I can imagine it's the same thing. And then there's times they just, it's just an awful experience for everybody. So I think it makes the good times even better. Like I had to take my son with me to the liquor store the other day, and he jumped right out of all the things I had to go to. I didn't go just to the liquor store. Okay.
Yeah.
This is a Giant Eagle. We had friends coming in. This was actually a few weeks ago. We had friends coming in from Youngstown. This is my buddy and the people, technically the couple that set us up. And we were coming in. Liz goes, I need you to go to the store. I need you to get this, and this, and then you got to go get the booze. I says, okay, that's fine.
And what's the sauce? What are we picking up?
Well, I was just getting like a bottle of Old Crow, and then she had to get like a bottle of Absolute, and then there was another, like a liqueur.
Sure.
There was a couple bottles of wine I had to get. I remember that. So we get that, and there were some other people coming in, and I had Axe with me. And if he'd have done this at the bakery or anywhere else, it would have been fine, because I had him on the counter at the bakery and everywhere else, and he was fine. I'm at the liquor store, man, and I'm in line, and I pop up, and I sit him on the counter, and he's sitting right in front of me, and I'm looking at the guy, and I could see him in the corner of my eyes. And I could see him like a little bit below me. And he's looking up at me, and he looked down, and he looked up at me, and he looked down, and I could see that he might have been thinking about something. And he just puts his hands up and leaps off the counter. And so he falls down. People behind me go, oh, my God! He's screaming. He is screaming. And I am standing there picking him up, and I realize I got this big, not one of the small bottles. I got the medium-sized bottle, a big bottle of Old Crow, and I got a toddler in my hand, and I am standing here in the liquor store of all places going, you couldn't have done this in the pharmacy, son. You could not have done this. Now, I couldn't say that to him because he's screaming, and I had to calm him down, and I felt bad. But I got out in the truck, and I just started roaring, laughing. I go, I can't show my face in the North Ridgeville Giant Eagle anymore because they're going to think I'm the deadbeat of deadbeats over here.
It's absolutely hysterical.
So they will. I mean, they embarrass the hell out of you any chance they get. And that was embarrassing. That was one of the most embarrassing things. Everybody thinks I'm a drunk. And I go, well, let's call a spade a spade. What do you think?
No, but it's the same idea. You're running into people while you're scooting down an aisle at the fair, and your kids are just like meltdown central, and they're like, everybody's going to think I'm the worst parent in the world. They're going to think I just spoil my kids, and if I don't give them everything they want, and then they're like, but I could shut them up if I gave them this, but then if I give them this, then I'm a bad parent because I'm not setting boundaries, and it's like sometimes you just feel like you cannot win.
The dads always get along. It's the mothers sometimes. Like Liz will get on those Facebook boards and stuff like that, and people get very judgmental. And like if I saw your kids and your kids started crying, I know what it's about. I get it. I feel for you. I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to judge you. I know you, Craig. You're a good dad.
It's funny, though, because my wife will be in that scenario where the kid's losing it, and another mom will go, yeah, I've been there. And even that will piss her off.
Oh, God.
Like, you just can't say anything. You just can't say anything to a mom. When she's in it, just leave her alone. Let her be. The best thing you do is stay out of her way.
She hates it when I say, and I don't even realize it, because I'll be up in my office, and I'll hear him yelling downstairs, and I go, what's going on down there? And she's like, oh, he is just incorrigible today. And I go, he never acts like this around me. And that, it's a good thing because it takes the heat off them and it puts it right on me, which, I'm a heat magnet anyway for her, so she don't care. And like all of a sudden, it's not Axel's fault anymore, and it's sure not the dog's fault anymore. It's my fault because they don't act like that around me. And I realized it because, like, okay, I'll take the heat off.
You're the bulletproof vest. You just walk down there and take those bullets.
Boy, every now and then you got to do it. I'm sorry. Now I am keeping you too long.
No, but I think we found your future. The parenting podcast on the side. People would listen to that.
Yeah, no one wants to do that.
All right, man. Thanks so much, Ken Carman.
Thank you. And I swear to God, the company line. I'm not even spitting wind here. I thought you were good, and you will be on my list.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thanks for listening, everybody. Until next time, it's been the WaitingForNextYear.com podcast.